Okay. Hey girls, welcome back to the Feel a Smile YouTube channel. I am so excited for today's episode. We are talking all things singleness, and this is for girls that are anything but married. I mean, the married girls can get something out of this too, but if you are single, dating, engaged, we're all singled until we're joined with another person. And we are so excited for this episode of the Feel a Smile YouTube channel, really to just equip you with wisdom and encouragement on how to navigate your season of singleness. I'm here today with my friend Meredith, and we are just going to take time talking about our stories through singleness. And then you guys have submitted some questions that we're so excited to sit down and answer just super conversationally today. I think that there's no better way to start off the week of Valentine's than sitting down and talking about the love of God, but also just our stories together and learning the love of God through a season of singleness. So, everyone, welcome my friend Meredith.
Hey.
Me and Meredith have gotten to do life together the last few years and really just navigate seasons of singleness and
Yeah.
dating. And Meredith, you've been such an encourager to me. I'm so grateful for that. We always like to say we can beat a dead horse about a boy. And so we're excited to just bring that all back rooted in Jesus and truly in a way that encourages you guys. But Mary, have anything you want to say to the girls?
No, thanks for having me. Scar is literally one of my favorite people. She is the best. So much wisdom, adds so much value to my life. So thanks for having me.
You're the best. This is my dream to have my friends on the podcast. Normally it's Caroline. Caroline's dating though, so we kicked her out of this episode.
Not today.
Okay, but we're so excited. I'm just gonna immediately jump in by just sharing a little bit about my story with singleness, and then Meredith is gonna share hers. We're just gonna talk about what God's taught us, what keeps us expectant, how we've navigated just standards and things that we're believing for and waiting for in our men of God that are out there before we jump into some questions that you guys have submitted. But I remember when I was 12 years old and I was sitting at a breakfast with Mr. John at the ranch. He would always do breakfast with us once a month. And I remember him talking about, like, girls, y'all need to write down on a piece of paper, like, what you want in a husband and pray for those things. And he kind of shared this story about a girl that he knew that did that. And all these years later, when she met her husband, I think he said, like, everything on the list was answered except for, like, he had green eyes instead of blue or something crazy. So I was like, heck yeah, like I'm
Yeah.
going to start to pray for my husband. So I remember being 12 years old and writing down this list. I wish I still had the original list because I literally think it says like goes for Alabama, has to love my grandmother. Because
Cannot be an Auburn fan.
No, literally cannot be an Auburn fan. What else could a 12-year-old girl want? But I remember that really just kind of being the catalyst of this journey of me being like, I will not settle for anything less than like the amazing person that God has for me. Was I a little extreme through a lot of years through that? Yes. I remember in sixth grade, I had a crush on this boy in my class and he like used God's name in vain. I was like, I will never.
You're like, no.
No, literally.
That's
I was
so
like, just
crazy.
like full of no grace whatsoever.
I was not thinking about that in sixth grade.
No, I was like, yeah, off my list. But I remember, as crazy as that sounds, it truly did begin to set kind of like a standard in my life for the kind of person that I wanted to date and honestly just kind of like be like associated with relationally. And I remember through a lot of seasons of my life that really kind of resulted in me like not dating anyone because my standards were high and like my expectations were high. And I think through that, I experienced a lot of protection from God, but also I would be like naive to say that that didn't come with a lot of hardships and things like
Yeah.
that too. And so I remember as I got older and was going to college, just being so expectant for this person that God had for me that I like hadn't met yet. And I think if you're anything like maybe us, like you kind of have like a blueprint in your mind of when you're going to meet someone and what it's going to look like and how it's going to go down. And then the moment that expectation seems to quote unquote like not be met, is when you kind of start to become disappointed in God or maybe disappointed in yourself or kind of start to like flip the script on your story and wondering if maybe you're the problem. And I remember actually like last year, I was super intentional in the year of 2025 of just spending time like optimizing my like relationship with God, and my word for the year was actually engaged, and it was to learn how to be engaged to Jesus. And the heart from that really comes from studying like what was a marriage created for and like what was the process of, like dating, engagement, and like being married. And we read about in the Bible, but then also know from Jewish culture, just about the relational season as a believer when you're like waiting on your husband and preparing for your husband. And what that kind of looked like is a husband would be interested in a girl, and their parents were the ones that would kind of arrange for them to meet or become husband and wife. And then during that season, both the bride and groom were individually preparing their hearts, which was what was called the engagement season, before the bridegroom would return and become one with his wife. So as I studied that, I was like, that is literally like our season of life with God on earth right now. So that's why I wanted to be so intentional about learning about that and just like experiencing the love of God in that way over the past year. And so I remember though, during the season, reflecting on my year, like we kind of encouraged you guys to do in our last episode, I remember kind of watching like the beginning of 2025 was a lot of time of me like praying for those things. And then the second half of 2025 was a lot of me just like experiencing those things. And as I was thinking about that and just thinking about kind of like my journey through the year of experiencing God's love in a tangible way, I remember a moment last year for the first time ever in my life of being like, am I like the problem and the reason for like never having dated anyone? Like for the first time in my life, I was like, are my expectations too high? Or like, will I find someone that can kind of like fit the mold of what I'm believing for? And I think I'm excited to just kind of share more practical ways to navigate those things in today's episode. But through all of that, you know, you realize like there are things in your life that God's spoken over you that you are praying and believing that your person is going to have. But then even through that, I remember just walking through a season of, I was reading Songs of Solomon, and I actually have the verse marked today to share with you guys. But I just remember being in this moment and being like, why, God, have I felt and just experienced being like so like unseen by boys and like not being able to find my person and different things like that. And there's a verse in Songs of Solomon, chapter 2, and it's verse 14, and this is the Passion Translation, which I love to read, but it says, "For you are my dove hidden in the split open rock. It was I who took you and hid you up high in the secret stairway of the sky. Let me see your radiant face and hear your sweet voice, how beautiful your eyes of worship and how lovely your voice of prayer." And I remember when I read that verse for the first time last year, reading the part where it says like, it was I that took you and hid you in the secret stairway of the sky. And it was like the Lord just like yanked me like 30,000 feet up and was like, there has never been a moment of your singleness journey that I did not see you. There has never been a prayer that you have prayed that I have not taken into consideration. In fact, all of these seasons of singleness and loneliness have been intentional and created by me so that you can become the woman of God that you're called to be. And so that I also can prepare like an amazing husband for you too. And through reading that passage, you know, the Lord revealed to me like, the only thing in life that can satisfy my soul is the love of God. And I remember obviously like knowing that God loved me in my mind, but being so hungry to experience that in my heart in a way that it changed literally like the desires of my heart. And so now in my like current state of singleness and just like praying for the person that God has for me, I know that like God has been so intentional in every part of my story, and that there is a person out there that God is preparing for me. But even if I lived my whole entire life without meeting another person or being married, like my heart would be satisfied by the love of God and for the purpose that He has in my life, which I think is kind of like lit in me a new fire and passion for this season, because I believe full of faith that like this season of singleness won't last forever, and yours won't either, especially if that's a desire of your heart, which is why I'm so passionate about optimizing it, walking in it with purpose, and encouraging other people in it too. So yeah.
That's so great. Well, my story, I feel like listening to you talk, I'm like, we're so different, but
Which is great.
It is so great. But I'm like, in sixth grade, I was not thinking about a list or what God had for me or anything like that. So I'm trying to think of my story. Really, I don't even think I was thinking about it other than just like watching TV and being like, oh my gosh, I want to have a boyfriend and whatever. So I'm trying to think. I think I started dating for the first time in high school. Again, wasn't really thinking about doing it the right way, or like what qualities am I looking for. I always had like a good head on my shoulders. Like we went to church, I love Jesus. The guy that I dated was great. But I wasn't thinking about a list or like, 10 years down the road. I was probably different from you in that like I'm an only child, so I was like very independent, very like strong-willed, very like I don't need a man to do this for me.
And I was like, where is my man? I would love one to do this for me.
So I remember whenever I broke up with the guy I dated in high school, we dated for a really long time in high school. So it's like funny to talk about that, but it was like everybody thought we were gonna get married and whatever. So we ended up breaking up, and I had gotten more serious in my faith, and like I just knew it was the right thing to do, and so did that. And then I remember telling my mom after, I was like, I'm not getting married until I'm 30. Like I'm gonna enjoy it. Which now I'm like, okay, I'm 25,
like,
and I like take that. I'm like, God, did you hear that? Take that back. But I was just like, so like this is what God has asked me to do. I'm gonna do it, and like I have all these things I want to do with my life, and like I don't want anybody to slow me down and whatever. So fast forward to college, I ended up dating this guy, and I went to Highlands College, and so I was in like a Bible college kind of vibe, and I remember everybody was talking about like marriage and submission and like all the stuff that I had just never really like heard of or dove into, and I was like, I have to submit to my husband, like I'm not doing that. Like the way that it was presented, the like way that the world described submission was just like. So I was dating this guy, and I was like, you know what? Like, I don't even know if I want to get married. Like, I don't even know if this is for me. Like, I don't think if that's what that is, then like, I don't think this is for me. And he was like, well, then why are we dating? And I was like, that's a great question. So then I was like, I need to go on a journey. I need to figure out what this looks like. So I remember just meeting with some mentors and trying to figure it out, because I like saw marriages. I saw my parents' marriage, and I was like, it doesn't sound like, I don't see it looking like this thing that it sounds like, but there was like a disconnect. And so anyways, just really kind of worked through some of that, figured out what healthy marriage and healthy submission actually looks like. And I remember we met with a couple. We like sat down with some of our pastors, and I was like, what does this mean? Like, where does it say talk about this in the Bible? And they like had us read Ephesians 5, and in Ephesians 5, yes, it talks about wives submitting, but it also talks about like husbands loving your wives as Christ loved the church.
Yeah, it's great. Which
Christ died for the church. And so like reading that, and it's like, no, that's what my husband's job is. And if he's going to love me like that and be willing to sacrifice his comfort and his life for me, then like that is something that I'm like, okay, yes, like I will submit my life to you, and I'll let you lead and follow that. And it also says like submit to each other, like there's so much more context. So I had to learn that. Anyways, that relationship ended, and since then have kind of been in a season of singleness. I've been on a few dates here and there, but nothing really serious. But I'm so thankful for that, because it really, really taught me like what marriage actually is. Yeah. And I don't think I would be like ready to be married if I hadn't gone through that, for sure. And so that's kind of a little bit about my journey without going too much into it. But yeah, just been in a season of singleness now. And I feel like you were talking about having a list, it was never really something that like I prayed about or like had expectation for. I think I was so independent and so like, I don't know, I saw so many girls in high school that their lives revolved around having a boyfriend or like being in a relationship, or that was all they talked about. And I was like, man, like there's just so much more to life than that. And because I didn't want to be that girl, I was like, I don't want to be that. So I'm going to go like to the other extreme. And like, I'm not going to talk about the fact that I, want to be married one day. I can't admit that out loud. I can't like pray for it. I can't make a list, because if I do any sort of thing like that, then I just like automatically in my mind was like the other end of the spectrum. And so anyways, I feel like the last couple years, most recently, has been me figuring out how to do that in a healthy way. And that it's not a bad thing to desire that. It's not a bad thing to pray for that. I remember somebody telling me like, if you want to be married, then like that is not a bad thing to pray for. Like for sure. If you want to have a healthy marriage, like you can go ahead and pray for that. And I was like you're right, that does make sense, and so I feel like that's just been a healing journey for my heart, is like learning that like you can desire things, and it doesn't have to look like your life like discontentment or your life like revolving around that thing. Totally. So that's a little bit about my journey.
That's so great too. And I also love that because marriage is such a gift, and God created marriage because he loves marriage. I mean, God loves relationships. Like the Bible says, like 2 is better than 1. And when you desire marriage, like I believe like God desires that like for you, with you, and like the Lord says, like, submit your request to God. Like, you have not because you ask not. Like, he
Yeah.
wants to hear, like, the desires of your
Yep.
heart. And I think maybe for some of us where our journeys looked a little, maybe what the world would like to say, like slower pace in terms of relationships, like there's been seasons in my life, like not dating anyone or like not having anyone like try to pursue me, where I've been like, what the heck is wrong? Like, is it bad that I'm like desiring this? But I do think there's like such a healthy way to go about navigating like the desire.
Yep.
I feel like I've experienced like highs and lows of that, of like praying for my husband in a healthy way, praying for my husband in like an obsessive way. And then I asked my mom the other day, I was like, Mom, like, what is like the healthy balance between like praying for someone that you feel like doesn't exist, but they
Yeah.
do, but then also like not letting it like consume your mind.
Yeah.
She had great wisdom and was talking about like there's a difference in something consuming your mind and something like leading you back to God. And she's like, if you're constantly talking to God about him, like you're
Yeah.
in a conversation with Jesus, you
That's
know,
great.
like if you're consumed with worry and fear, like that's a little different. I do think marriage can be a little like nerve wracking for the independent girls, especially because when I hear married people ask their husbands for
Yeah.
permission to do stuff, I'm like, I don't care
I
what
ain't
I'm
asking
asking.
for
You better get ready to
permission.
say yes, you know.
Right.
But I'm like, no, one day it'll be okay,
Yeah.
and like I will have a man that I love, and like will value his
Yep.
like authority and
Yep.
wisdom in my life. And the world like can twist and turn that 100 different directions. But that's such a good takeaway, and I love that our stories are so different because I know each of y'all online listening are so different too,
Yep.
and have different journeys and things too. But okay, next we're gonna jump into some questions that you guys submitted on TikTok and Instagram. Thank you all so much for submitting questions. That's what makes this so fun, is being able to answer real life questions that you guys truly want to know the answer to. And so the first question on our list is, what has God taught you through singleness? What has God taught you through singleness? You want to go first?
Yeah, I can. Okay, I kind of answered this question in two ways. The first thing, I know this is not what the question is asking, but when I think about singleness, like I've been single my whole life. So like everything that I've learned in life
Yeah.
has been something I've learned in singleness. And so I
So
think like
good.
sometimes we're like, oh, like what, we just think about
Yeah.
singleness in that, kind of like negative light. But I'm like, everything that I've learned about like in life and about my relationship with Jesus has been something that like I have learned in this season. And so regardless of, if this season were to end today, like I can look back and the season has been a gift because I've learned, like I met Jesus while I was single. Like I learned how to follow him when I was single, and I like learned the purpose that he has for me. And I don't know. So I know that's probably not what the question is asking, but
great.
that was the first thing that came to my mind is, man, there's been so much that I have learned in this season, and that I'm thankful for. And I'm thankful that like those things could have my focus. And so I know that's not really what the question was asking, but I think probably what the question really is asking is like, I wrote it down this way, is like, what have I learned from being in a season that I hope is temporary, or a season that I desire to look different? Like I think that's probably what the question is asking. When you desire marriage but you're in a season of singleness, what has it taught you? And I think for me, I kind of shared this a little bit earlier, but I think one thing for me is that it taught me that it's okay to admit my desire. Because I like was so afraid of, being that girl that like was obsessive about it, or like unhealthy. Like I was like, oh, I can't make a list, or I can't do this or that or whatever. I think for me, it's taught me like it's okay to admit that desire and bring it to the Lord and pray for it and let God like work in that. So I think that's one thing for me that it's taught me is like, it's okay to desire something that you don't have, and to bring it to God and have that desire as long as it doesn't become an idol, and like walking that balance, and honestly like walking that with him and figuring it out, like because there have been seasons when it has become too much of a focus, and like letting him refine and like help me not idolize that and not idolize my own desires, but like make him the one thing. And if he's the one thing, then like he doesn't say you can't have desires and dreams and other things. He just has to be number one and be the first thing. And so I think for me, it's taught me, and even more than that, like, one day when I do get married, like there's going to be other things I desire. And so it's taught me the principle of like having those desires, bringing them to him, like praying for them, but then also keeping him the main thing, and learning how to do that. So
that's so good. Okay, I feel like my answer honestly ties well into yours, because you were kind of talking about how there's so many things you have learned in life that you have learned in your singleness season. And I wrote down, there are things that you will learn in this season that you will never be able to undistractedly learn in another season. And I don't know if y'all have ever had a crush, but I have. And I know how distracted I get just when I have a crush on
that's
someone.
so true.
Not to mention, like, I can't imagine the day that I'm like falling in love with somebody and want to marry them.
Yep, spend all your time with them. Yeah.
And, you know, we read about in the Bible how, like, Paul says that singleness is a season for undistracted devotion to God. There are so many things that we get to undistractedly do. And I think if we're not careful, we can quickly miss like what a gift this season is.
So true.
And that sounds so cliche, and I know that you've heard it 100 times, but there will be a day when like you don't have time to spend time with God the way that you do today. You know, like you won't be able to navigate life the way that you do today. Like literally just thinking about who you are. Like you don't have marriage, you don't have kids, you're not like literally building a godly relationship. So I think for me, it's taught me like what a gift this undistracted season is.
So
in ways that like we'll just never like get back. And there's a lot of days where you're like, oh my gosh, well, I'm tired of being undistracted. Like I would love somebody to distract me. But then also too, like on the flip side, there's so many things we're learning and growing in. I truly believe like one day when we're married, we're going to be so grateful for these extra years to like learn more about ourselves in like an independent environment before we like partner together with someone else. So that was kind of my, biggest thing I feel like the Lord's taught me, especially like taught me to value too.
For sure. That's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good.
Okay, the next question is what keeps you expectant that your person is out there and is on the way? I love this question because we kind of talked about this a little bit before we hopped on. Like, what is the difference in being expectant for life? Like, I'm expectant during this season because I know whether God brings me someone or he doesn't, like my heart will be satisfied the rest of my life because I have God. But what keeps me expectant that like there is a person out there that I'm going to marry one day? I wrote down the longer that you walk with God, the more you hear and know the voice of God. And when we hear the voice of God, we also hear his promises in his word. And I think we all have something that we feel like God has spoken to us either about that person or an attribute about that person for all the list makers out there. So I think what keeps me expectant that my person is out there is because there is someone that God has like called me to pray for already. There are attributes that I'm already praying for into that person. I think that I'm encouraged to know that there is not a prayer that I pray that does not fall like on open and expectant ears like God's. And when you like know the voice of God and know that there's things that you've spoken, that he's spoken in your life, however God speaks to you, like I think those are things that just kind of keep my heart expectant and ready, especially when I think about being like a mom one day. I'm like, well, I can't have a kid with just me. So like there's someone out there, you know, that's going to be like a father to my child. So those are, I feel like, just like practical things that keep my heart expectant is truly like the voice of God that's spoken over my life.
Yeah, that's so great. And I love that you said God's promise because that's literally what I wrote down and that's like my story. And when I thought about this question, I feel like God has spoken to me so clearly, which has been so sweet because I've been on this journey. So I've shared a little bit about this already, but to share more details, I guess it was probably the fall of 2022. When I like first started praying for like, when it finally like clicked of like, okay, I'm gonna like start praying for this. I'm gonna start asking God for my like future, my family, my marriage, like things like that. And, but also I was like, when I got there, the first half was me getting there. And then when I got there, I was like, okay, well now I feel like if I start praying for this, then I have to trust God with it. And if I trust God with it, like what if he, you know, like what if he sends me this really
show up?
Okay, well but my fear was like, what if he sends me this really godly guy, but like he's really not cute, or like he doesn't, I don't know, you know, or what if it's just like not somebody that I enjoy or not somebody that I like, but he's a really great guy and he's like really loves God.
But there's that one thing.
But there's that one thing, you know, and so anyways, that was just for some reason. It sounds so silly to say out loud, but like truly in my heart, I was like, I feel like if I trust God with it, and then there were some like, you know, guys like around and I'm like, oh God, like what if it's him, you know? Like,
or you know, like when someone tries to set you up with someone and you're like, I'm offended.
You're like, he's great.
In the best way. But I'm like, what makes you think? Oh,
yeah. And so there were some great guys around me that had, but I was just like, I don't want to end up with him.
You said, please God, not
and I was just like so afraid that.
That's so funny.
Anyways, so I kind of had to go through that. That sounds so silly, but that was like a processing thing in my heart. And so I remember the beginning of 2023, Me and one of my friends, we do this at the beginning of the year. We always go to dinner and talk about like our like just what's going on in our lives, life updates, things we're believing for the year and whatever. And she was the first person I told that because it sounded so silly in my head. And so she was the first person that I like said that out loud to, was like that fear that I just said about like, well, I feel like if I really trust God with this, he's going to give me somebody I don't like or that I'm not attracted to or that like I get the ick from or whatever. I think partly because there was this guy that a couple years before I had gone on a couple dates with and he was a really great guy, but I just like was not like he felt like a brother. And so anyways, I think that maybe kind of stemmed the fear of like, it was going to feel like that. So anyways, all that to say, I finally admitted it to my friend. And then the next morning I woke up and I like was reading this 1 year Bible plan. And I was in Matthew. And then there were 2 verses that like jumped out of the pages to me. One of them was Matthew 6:33. And it's seek first my kingdom and my righteousness and all these things will be added to you as well. And I felt like for me, cause I had like kind of just been worried about like all that, like I started praying about it and then I kind of got like worried about it, you know. I was like, I was so worried. Before that verse, it's talking about like, don't worry about your life, whatever. And so I felt like God was like, hey, just like take a breath. Your job is to pursue me and to pursue my kingdom. And like, I'm going to take care of everything else. And then later I kept reading and it was like, God's word was like, I'm like, I read these verses before, but it's the verses, I think it's Matthew 7:9-11, I think. But it's where Jesus is like, if your son asked for bread, who would give him a stone? If he asked for a fish, who would give him a snake? If you who are evil know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father in heaven? And it felt like God was like, because word for word, it felt like he was speaking to me word for word. Like I was afraid that if I asked God for this, he was going to give me somebody I didn't like. And God was like, if you ask for a healthy marriage, if you ask to be married to somebody that like is all these things, why would I give you somebody that you're not attracted to? Or why would I give you somebody that like you don't like spending time with, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh, God, you heard me.
Yeah,
and so
isn't the best feeling? You're like, he is real.
He's real. Like he heard me, you know? And so that for me was like, okay, God, you're in this. You've heard my prayers. Like you don't think it's stupid that I'm praying for this. You don't think it's like silly that I'm praying for this. Like you see me, you've heard me, and you're in this with me. And that was just like such a big deal for me because of just being afraid to pray for it or feeling silly for it or whatever. And so that kind of started the journey of like that, like felt like, okay, God, that's a promise I can hold on to from you. And then that month or like the next month, Matthew 6:33 was like the theme of our student services. I work in our student ministry, and that was like the theme for some of our student services. So it was like, oh my gosh, a reminder of your promise. And then a year later, I was reading this book. It's a really great book. It's called The Sacred Search. And I don't know why I started reading it, but the entire book, I didn't know anything about the book before I started reading it. I start reading it, like the first chapter is like, this whole book is based on Matthew 6:33. So the whole book is like talking about how like to find somebody that you can seek God's kingdom first with. And I was like, okay, God, like it was just a reminder to me of like, hey, like you're still in this with me and like your promise still stands. And so that verse has just been something that's like kept popping up. And then this year, there were just some things that towards the end of last year that I don't know, I just had to like be obedient to the Lord, and some things that like didn't end up the way that like I thought they would, but I knew that like God was in it and I just had to walk in obedience. And then I found out like our word for the year as a church this year is seek first, and it's based on Matthew 6:33. And so January comes around and our sermon series this month has been Matthew 6:33, like 21 days of prayer this season that our church has. Every single day I feel like we were talking about Matthew 6:33.
Yeah.
Our like student services have been based on Matthew 6:33. And so it just felt like God was like pouring out his promise over my life of like, hey, I'm still in this and I'm still in it with you, and I see you and I see your obedience and like just all that. And so for me, I think that has allowed me, like I don't have necessarily like characteristics or I don't have like certain promises like that, but I feel like God's promise to me has been that, and like he's kept showing up, he's kept pouring his promise out. And so for me, that's just what I hold on to of like, okay, God, your promise to me was that, and so I'll continue to seek you and your kingdom first and trust that you're going to take care of everything else.
For sure.
So, yeah.
That is so good. And I love that so much because I have 2 things I was thinking through. God is such a trustworthy God.
Yeah, he is.
And I'm like, when have you ever put something in God's hand and him let you down?
Yeah.
When I was in high school, I used to pray all the time. I'm like, this is so embarrassing, but it's real. I used to be like, Mom, I just really want my husband to be hot. It's like, Mom, I just want my husband to be hot so bad. And she would be like, he will be hot. Like, you will think that he's hot. And I was like, I don't just want to think he's hot. They're like, I want everyone to think he's cute. Like, I want him to, like, actually be cute.
Yeah.
And I remember I would just pray and, like, be so worried that I was going to find this great guy. But, like, I wasn't going to think he was cute or something like that. There has never been anything in life that I've surrendered to Jesus that he has not let me down
Oh my gosh, yes.
God will not let you down in what
Yes.
you're praying for and in what you're believing for and in the desires of your heart. Like, there is a piece of Jesus woven in each and every one of us. His desires are the desires that are in your heart. And if we desire it for us, how much more does God want it? Like, how much more does he want to provide for us? How much more does he want to give us the gift that we're believing for? So that's a great reason for you guys to be expectant too, is like, when you have a desire of your heart, like, God wants to meet that need, if not surpass it. You know, our promise in Ephesians is exceedingly and abundantly more. It's not even just the basis of what you're praying for. It's so even more than that, which is so exciting.
It's so good. Trust, though, is hard.
It's so
there's
hard.
like, I think, you know, we like, it's so easy to like start off trusting God and then you get to a place. I feel like I've been in this season recently where it's like, oh, I at one point really did trust you. And then I got to a place where like, oh, I thought it was going to look one way. And so I kind of held on to what I thought it was going to look like. And having to let go of that and be like, okay, that wasn't your plan. That wasn't exactly what you were doing. But like submitting that and surrendering it and still trusting him, okay, it may not look like exactly what I thought it was going to look like, and it may require surrender, and it may require giving up things that like I thought I wanted or thought that it was going to look like, but it's so good. And his promise, like if we really believe his word, that he is the God of exceedingly and abundantly more, that like, okay, if I'm giving this up, or if I'm surrendering this relationship, or I'm surrendering this like picture or this idea of what I thought it was going to look like, if I'm giving that up, then what he has to be exceedingly and abundantly more than that.
Has to be.
And that's like exciting, but it is hard. It's so hard.
It is hard too, especially the older you get, the more that you realize your expectation for who you want to marry is going to change.
Yeah.
I could care less if my boyfriend goes for Alabama. Like, 12-year-old me has moved on.
Right.
But like,
right.
when I'm in 6th grade, I'm like, oh my gosh, like, but what if he doesn't go for Alabama? You know, and so like your expectations will change through the years, but God's goodness and faithfulness will not.
True.
And it will prove true.
That is so true.
And withstand the test of time,
Yeah,
you know, and
that's
like
great.
how much he wants to provide for you, make a way for you.
Yeah.
So I love that. And we all need a husband that will seek first the kingdom.
Yeah.
We don't want anything less.
No.
So good. Okay, the next question, I love this one because I just feel like it's super practical and fun. Best advice for being content and enjoying singleness, especially the longer that I wait. I used to not get the longer that I wait part until probably about 9 months ago. And I was like, we're getting into the longer that I wait, which I'm aware, like, I'm 24, like, I'm still young. I'm fine. Like, there's people all around the world that don't get married until they're 30, and that's normal. Obviously, we're in the South, so the expectation is just different. But how do you, how can you be content and just enjoy this season? I wrote down in my notes that there is a difference between being expectant and being content in a season of singleness. Expectancy is about the future. Contentment is about the present. So I'm expectant for this season and what's to come because I know no matter what, like Jesus satisfies my soul, but also I can be consistent now by the choices that I make in this season that I'm in. So what does that look like for me? That looks like enjoying the heck out of life. Like Meredith and our friend Emily that didn't get to come today, they have been, I mean, the biggest gifts of like young adult friendships in my life. Like, y'all truly just bring me so much joy. We laugh so much. We go to dinner so much. We just like talk so much together. And if we were all married 3 years ago, like that would just not be possible. I mentioned earlier, like there's things that you can do in this season of life that you will not be able to do in other seasons of life. So whatever those things are, like tap into those, whether it's like literally writing them down, like time to be home alone on a weekend night, or weeknight, or just spending time with friends, going out to dinner, whatever that may be. During seasons of like low seasons of singleness, I will write down 3 things that I can be grateful for this season a day. Because I think it just sets my mind on like what a gift this season is, the reality that it will not last forever. And it truly just keeps my heart like loving this season that I'm in. So
that's so great. I think for me, the first thing that came to my mind was the verse in Philippians, and I wrote it down. Philippians 4, it's 11 through 13, and it's Paul when he's in prison. It's like right before he gets into like the I can do, the common verse. But he says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I have learned to be content in whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. And so I think for me, and just in life in general, I think one of the things to learn is that our joy and our contentment cannot come from our circumstances.
So great.
And that's what like Paul is describing here. And that's just like such a good lesson. I think we have the opportunity to learn in singleness, but that lesson and like that principle is going to carry us in so many seasons that like our joy and our contentment cannot be based on our circumstances. And so in singleness, if you desire marriage, like it is the opportunity to learn to be content and to learn to be like, okay, God, if this is the season that you have me in, like I'm going to be content here, like whether I have plenty or I'm in need, or whether I have what I desire or I don't have what I desire, like my contentment, my joy, my fulfillment does not come from my needs or my desires being met. It comes from you. And learning that, like if we can learn that when we're single, because once you get married, there's going to be something else that you desire, or there's going to be a season that like maybe work is just really, really, really going to suck, or maybe like you and your husband are going to go through a really hard time. And if your joy is based on circumstances, if your joy is based on, oh, I got this thing that I wanted, well, you're going to like, we're going to end up back where we were, you know.
Swear one,
but if
girl.
we can learn to be content in this season, then like the next season that comes, that like our circumstances may, you know, not be great, but like we can still be joyful and we can still be content in the middle of it. So I don't know if that's like advice, but I think
that is so good.
That's what came to my mind when I was thinking about this question.
I love that so much, because a boy will never be the answer to your desires. The feelings that being with a boy or in a relationship gives are temporary. The satisfaction that we are looking for can only be found in Jesus. So to walk out of a season of singleness, entering a season of a relationship or marriage with the expectation that that person can satisfy you, will fail you every single time. I learned about this in like my professional life, but someone was telling me the way that you end a season will be the platform at which you like begin the next one. And I don't think that that's any different for singleness. Like the way that you finish your singleness race will be the place that you start your relational and marriage race from. So if you are ending your season of singleness looking for satisfaction in a human being, you will be extremely let down when you enter into a relationship that you expect to heal your heart. And what you're looking for is not found in him. It's found in Jesus. So I love that expectation, trust, contentment. Like we get to be content in every season of singleness and waiting. There's Don Tree's book talks about this, about slow burn, where it talks about singleness is not a season of waiting. Like literally our life is a season of waiting, because we're forever on earth waiting for what our heart truly desires, which is the return of Christ.
That's so good.
So like you said, like using singleness as a season to get that worked into your heart before you like falsely project that on another human being is a fantastic takeaway to learn. Especially in find contentment.
And I think it's a choice too. Like, you know, we're like, oh, well, I want to feel this, or I want to feel joy, or I want to feel contentment. But like, I don't know. I say this all the time. I don't know if it's good advice or not, but this is just how I work it out in my own life. Like sometimes I just have to fake it till I make it. And there are days like in other situations this past year that I like, not related to dating, but like related to just that like discontentment. Like my circumstance doesn't look good in this area, but like I'm going to wake up and like literally there was a season where I was like speaking words over my life that I did not feel, and like acting in a way that like I did not feel. Like I'm going to walk into the situation with joy, and I'm going to choose to have a smile on my face, and I'm going to choose to whatever until I feel that way.
It's a choice.
And I think when we choose, okay, God, what does your word say? And your word says that like you are good, and your word says that you give me good things. And so even if my circumstance in the natural doesn't look like that, I'm going to choose to stand on his word. And I'm going to choose and like set my attitude, set my behavior, set my mind on that it is that, until my circumstance in the natural catches up to that spiritual reality. And so I think, I don't know, I just would want like for us girls, like let's stand up, like let's make the choice of like, no, like this is a gift, and like God is good, and he's been good to you. And so even if like we don't see it in the natural, we're gonna choose to have joy, and we're gonna choose, hey, maybe you don't feel it, but like I thank you, Jesus, like being grateful and like I am content. I am joyful. My life is full. Like, I am fulfilled. Like, speaking that and walking, like, put your shoulders back. Like, walk with
Yeah.
it. Carry yourself in a way. And I think, like, the circumstance of our situation and the
Will
way we
catch up.
feel will catch up if we, like,
Totally.
choose to do it anyways.
For sure, because that's there's blessing and obedience, and that's
Yeah.
what God's called us to be obedient to. And I think the longer we obey, we realize the blessing isn't necessarily materialistic. It's
Yeah.
like having more of Jesus in your
Yeah,
life,
yeah.
and that's what you can expect to get when you walk in that way. I love that so much. Okay, the next question that we have is, it says, I know the waiting season is growing me, but how do I prepare to be a godly wife? Which I love this question so much. One way that I try to prepare to be a godly wife, because I love my husband so much already, even though I don't know who he is, I want to be the best wife ever for him. I love to ask married people questions.
good.
Like, I ask them questions as if I'm getting married tomorrow, and I'm not. But I just want to know, like, especially people that have good, healthy, godly marriages. I'm like, how did y'all do that? Like, what things do y'all value? What vision do you have for your marriage? Like, what are practical things that y'all do? How do you communicate? How do you honor one another? Like, I just love to ask people questions about their marriage. And then another thing that I like to do is I love to pray for my husband and like journal prayers, but I also am like, I don't really know what that person's going to be like. So I don't really know how to like specifically pray for like God to prepare my heart for him, but I can say, God, prepare my heart for him. However, like God knows
Yeah,
him, but
yeah.
I don't. So I'm like, God, like prepare my heart for him and whatever like that's going to look like in our relationship one day. So I would just say like ask people in godly marriages questions, and then also just pray for God to prepare your heart. I think some of the most powerful prayers are those that are just out of like innocent faith of like, I don't know. I don't even hardly know what I'm praying for, but I know that my heart wants to pray and prepare.
Yep.
And so, yeah, I think that's one way I like to prepare to be a godly wife.
And you're so good at that. We were talking before this, and you were talking about like somebody that you asked a question to, and I was
Yeah.
like, man, that's such a good question. Like,
so
you're just
good.
so good at thinking of really great
I love
questions.
to learn.
Which is like, so what I wrote down is, obviously I'm not a wife, so I don't know how to be a good wife, to be honest,
Me
because I'm
neither.
not a wife. But what I wrote down is like, I think the best thing that we can do now is to learn how to learn. And so I think
Yeah.
even in just you're asking, like learning how to ask great questions, one day you are going to be married, and there's going to be things that you have to ask married people about.
Yeah.
And so what you're putting into practice now is setting you up for success when you are there. Because we can prepare for marriage, all these things, but there's so much we don't know, and
There
there's so much that like
is.
is just going to
That
be
only experience can teach.
yes.
Yeah.
But I think if we can learn how to learn and learn how to grow in the season that we're in, the principles and the habits of that will teach us in the season that we are a wife. We'll naturally learn how to be a good wife
Yeah.
because we know how to learn and we know how to grow. And so I love that you said asking questions. That wasn't even something that I was thinking about, but that's a great one.
Yeah.
But anything that like right now, the things that I'm learning right now, the things I need to grow in right now, it's like, okay, what am I doing to learn in those areas now? Am I asking questions? Am I learning from mentors? Am I talking to my friends, like good, godly friends? Am I reading God's word? Am I like searching his word for what his word says
So
about those
good.
situations? Am I reading books? Like,
Yeah.
and if I'm doing those, like maybe it's not all about how to be a wife right now. Maybe it's about how to be a good friend, or maybe
Yeah.
it's about how to be a good like steward of the purpose that God's given me for my life, like whatever it is. But those habits and those principles, when I am married and I'm trying to learn how to be a good wife, then it's like, oh, I know where to go.
They'll
I know
fall
I
into
can go
place.
sit down and with a married couple and talk with them. I can go to my mentors and process what I'm experiencing. I can read God's word and like know how to pull it out and apply it to my life. So I don't know if that's helpful.
That's really
but
good.
what
Yeah,
I was
like not
thinking.
necessarily how you're like, I'm not necessarily like trying to figure out how to be a good wife to a person I don't know, but I am
Yeah.
developing principles that will
Yeah.
create habits
Yeah.
of where to look for and find wisdom when you're in a marriage.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah.
so great and such
Yeah,
a
yeah.
gift. Another thing that I was thinking about is and this isn't necessarily like praying to be a godly wife by any means, but more so like ask God what he wants you to learn in this
That's so
season
great.
of singleness. And I think as you ask God what he wants you to learn in this season, he will build in you the attributes, characteristics, development that you will need to have like
Yeah.
in completion
Yeah.
with the season that your time to be a wife comes. But I've like honestly just started asking God that, like, okay, like what do you want me to learn? Because I honestly got to a season last year, I mentioned this earlier, of like, what am I doing wrong? I remember like crying to God and being like, I don't know what else you want me to do, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the Lord, like so kindly and full of mercy and grace as he always does, was like, sister, this ain't a right or wrong. Like, it's just a
Yeah.
my timing
Yeah.
type of
That's
thing,
okay.
you know? And so I remember I was like, okay, God, like, what else do you want me to do to like be ready and be prepared like for this person one day? So asking God to like what does he want to teach you in this season? What can you learn more about him in
Yeah,
this
that's so
season?
great.
Like I've learned like he satisfies every desire of my heart. So I think those are just like great. I love that, like habits to build in that will really bless your godly marriage one day too, which is really great. Okay, the next question is, how do I know if God's giving me discernment or if I'm being too picky?
That's so great.
That
Such a
should
good
be the question of the episode, because obviously we're all here because we have
Yep.
high standards and are still single. And that is why the title of this episode is Single Not Settling,
Yep.
is because we're single, but we're unashamed to be single because we're not settling for anything less than what we believe that
Yeah.
God has spoken over us, which is why we like Meredith said, get our shoulders back and stand strong in what we're believing and waiting for.
Yep.
So asterisks to you, great question, and I'm right there with you. What I have written down is the sheep know the sound of the shepherd's voice. Be confident in what you have heard God speak. There are things that our pride has yielded expectation in that we might have to submit to God's plan in our life. I think probably that comes out in like materialistic things, physical appearance, whatever that may be. There are also things that God has spoken to you spiritually that you just can't explain, but you know that God's called you to marry someone like that, and you have to stand in your conviction in those things that
Yeah,
you're waiting and
yeah,
believing for.
yeah.
On that note, though, I can be someone that has a list of 150 extremely high expectations for a person. And I met with a lady yesterday, and she had great wisdom. She's married. And of course, I was asking her all these questions about her marriage. And I was like, how do y'all have such a godly marriage? What attributes should I look for in a person that are going to like be a catalyst to become someone like your husband? And she was saying, I think one thing that young people that are spiritually wise have a hard time with is projecting expectation spiritually on a 25-year-old that is something that like maybe a 45-year-old has.
Yeah.
The things that we are praying and asking and believing for that are spiritual things take time, and they take experience, and they take time walking with God. And so I think there are some areas where we could probably be a little picky on those because we're wanting them to like literally walk with God like they're a 50-year-old pastor and they're like 22. I also think though God will open up your eyes to know when, where, and how to give grace. She also shared, she was like, he was not at 23, like obviously who he is now. Was he a great 23-year-old? Absolutely. But she was like, one of the things though, that was my like biggest, that was her like biggest takeaway in terms of what she was like waiting for, is she was like, the way that I experienced like and felt the Holy Spirit when I was with him was
So
different
great.
than anyone like
That's
I'd
so
ever been
great.
around.
Yeah.
So I think like tying that back into what I first said, like the sheep know the sound of the shepherd's voice. The enemy wants to make us second guess what God has
Yep.
spoken over us or
Yep.
what we feel in our spirit
Yep.
that God has in store for us. It's so important to live by that conviction because it's what God said,
For
you know?
sure.
So
For
that's what
sure.
I would say.
Yeah.
If you're being, if it's discernment or too picky, discernment's from the Holy Spirit. We know in our hearts what's discernment.
Yeah.
And we follow that.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to be obedient to that because it may not be what you want
is.
or what
Yeah.
you think you want, but it's always better. It's always
is.
better. I think two things. The first thing that I thought of was one, I think sometimes when your options are slim, it can feel like you're being too picky because you're like,
That's great.
this is the only
Yeah.
option. This is the only guy that seems interested or that's around my age, that's single, that also loves Jesus, that, you know, so like, am I being too picky because I don't see anything else?
Anything else?
So I would say just, I don't know, at least for me, that's something that I just have to be aware of and like careful of is like, don't let the lack of what you can see make you feel like you're being too picky.
That's
Because
great.
God can, I think we've seen this with our friends, like God can
Yeah.
literally bring somebody out of nowhere or like
Literally.
orchestrate things out of nowhere. And so just trusting him with that.
Yeah.
The other side of that is, I think for me, because there have been situations where I'm like, man, I don't know on this thing. Like, is this a big deal? Is it not a big deal?
Yeah.
It's not a salvation thing. It's, you know, it's kind of just like personality thing,
Yeah.
kind of like, I can't tell if it's a character thing. I don't really know. And I like always put so much pressure on myself to figure that out before I like go on a first date or before I
Me
really
too,
get
girl.
invested.
Yeah.
But something that I've had to learn is like you're just not gonna know until you give it a
I
shot.
know.
And so it's okay to give it a shot. And if there's like, be aware of those things, like figure out what those things are. And if they're big rock things, like, you can't really tell if he loves Jesus, well, that's a pretty big red flag. But like if it's like, oh, well, he said this, I can't tell if it's this,
Yeah.
or, like just go on a date, get to know
Yeah.
him. Like the more you get to know his friends, the more you're around him, the more you get to know his character. Either that's going to get really loud, it's going to become brighter and brighter
sure.
as a red flag, or it's going to fade away and you're going to realize, oh, that wasn't what I thought. So I don't know. I don't know if
That's
that's good
great.
advice, but like, and don't get too, too invested, but like give it a shot and see where it goes. And,
Yeah.
and then use your discernment. And if God is speaking to you, then be obedient and walk away if it's not,
Yeah.
good. But
I think walking through a season of singleness is all about just living life open-handedly with God, and taking opportunity as it comes while also humbly being like willing to fail too and like
Yeah.
allow God to
Yeah.
pick up your pieces like
For
he
sure.
always does. Okay, last question that we like really wanted to highlight. We were like, this might be a really good one. How do I navigate loneliness without rushing into a relationship? So real, because when you are lonely, it is really quick to kind of jump to like the next best thing instead of patiently waiting for like what God has for you, whether that's out of lust, fleshly desire, loneliness, like whatever that may be. I wrote down, my mom always says that patience keeps the heart pure. There is nothing wrong with like taking things very slow,
Yeah.
especially like in a relationship with a boy. But also I think prayer, like praying through decisions before you make them, praying through conversations before you have them. Don't be reactive. Like we know to be proactive. Like that's, like a professional value. So I think we can let that like come alive in our singleness too. But don't jump to every reach out, but truly filter it through like the lens of Jesus, accountability in your life, people in your life. Don't let loneliness trick you into settling for less
that's
than what you're believing for.
That's so great. The first thing that came to my mind, it just like, I don't know, this question just felt like sensitive. Like loneliness is so real. And I think it's something that nobody wants to admit to. Like you don't want to say like you feel alone, or like everybody looks like they have friends and they have relationships and like they're fine. And you're the only one that feels that way, but you're not. And so if you're feeling that way, I would just say, don't like run away from it. Like lean into it with Jesus. And like, I think about like his word says that he will put the lonely in families. And so like lean into it with him, take that to him. And the answer is not rushing into a relationship. Like
That's great.
trust his timing, but take that loneliness. He doesn't, in the waiting, he doesn't want you to feel that way, so take that to him and like be honest with him and just sit with him. And like, he's your father and he loves you. He's your friend too. And so, like sit with him, tell him how you feel, let him speak into it, find verses that talk about it, and then trust his word. Like his word says that he'll put the lonely in families. And so like even like the prayer of like, okay, God, if this is not my season where you're going to bring me a husband and like let me start a family of my own, then like would you bring family around me? Like bring a married couple around me that like I can go just hang out at their house and like be a part of their family. Or we have such great friends. Like I think about Scarlet and our friend Emily that she was talking about. They have like, y'all have become my family, and we do things together. We hang out all the time, and like other girls and just people that I work with. And God has put family in my life that I'm not married and I don't have my own children or anything like that, but like I feel like he's put me in a family in this season. But that came from a season of like feeling a little lonely and like graduating college and like everybody moving away and kind of being in this single young adult phase and not really having a ton of friends in the same season. And being honest with the Lord about that and praying and asking God for friends. And it doesn't happen overnight, but it's kind of that fake it till you make it kind of thing of like, I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to go to small groups. I'm going to go find this until I'm in a season where I feel like that's been fulfilled. So I don't run away from the loneliness. It's so real. I said I was an only child earlier. And so I think about, my life, and I'm like, I do trust you, God, but I'm like, I don't want to be 45 and not have kids and like
you won't
live far away from my family. And then like, what am I going to do on Christmas? Like I'm just going to be me, So I have those thoughts too. And you worry about things like that. But if I believe God's word and his word says that he's good, it says that he puts the lonely in families. And so I just have to trust him and take him at his word. And even if it doesn't look like what I thought or what I think I want, like he's good. And so I just have to trust that.
That's so true. And I think too, like, you want God to heal your loneliness. You don't want a boy to.
For sure.
And so like walking through that with God before you like jump into a relationship. And if there's a relationship that like you're pursuing or a boy that is, like y'all's relationship will be better off for it when you allow God to
100%.
heal that area of your heart before you jump into it. But that was so good. Thank you, Mary, for your
Of
wisdom.
course.
It
Thanks for
was
having me
so
on.
good. Thank y'all for submitting
Yes.
questions.
Such great
We hope that
questions.
this episode just impacted you and encouraged you. You are so loved and valued by God. Your husband is out there, and Jesus is just going to be at the center of it. It's going to be so amazing. And I know we all like don't know each other, but I can't wait to watch it unfold. Especially those of you
Yes.
listening and watching that I
Yes.
do know. But thank y'all for tuning in today and listening. We're so grateful for you guys, and we'll see you next time on the Feel a Smile YouTube. Bye.
Bye.